Hello, my name is Sheila and I would like to welcome you to my podcast All About You. I love to listen to podcasts and especially conversations with famous people. However, I think everyone has a story to tell. Maybe a place you have visited, a hobby you enjoy, or anything that you feel would be of interest. I want to have conversations with lots of different people and hear their stories. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on my email allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com. Welcome to the All About You podcast. Today my guest is Ian Walker from Edinburgh, Scotland, who is living his dream of combining his loves of Scotland, history and his passion for ancestry. Ian created his business Borders Journeys in 2012, in which he offers private guided tours of Scotland, as well as researching family histories and obtaining documents, as he knows where to look and who to ask. He will then take you on a tour to where your ancestors lived and explain the story of your family. Ian, welcome to the All About You podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila.
Well, Ian, I am so interested to hear the story of how you created your business Borders Journeys. So let's start at the very beginning. Were you always interested in history?
As far as I remember, I was always interested in history. I was an inquisitive child, asked questions about history and where I came from and who were they and why were they visiting us and who were they at my grandparents'. And I just wanted to know who everybody was and how they were related to me.
So what did you want to do when you grew up? Did you have any ideas what you wanted to do as a profession?
Through school, I really didn't have a real concrete idea. Part of me knew I didn't want to go into the traditional role that generations of my family had been in, farming, agriculture. I knew that wasn't for me. I wanted to be able to travel and do what I wanted when I wanted, rather than be dictated by the seasons. And agriculture and farming is very much a love and a passion, and it consumes your life. So it's your life, it's your career, it's your hobby, it's your everything. Whereas I didn't want a job to really dictate to me what I did. And I sort of went down the route of banking and civil service. And as it was, at 18, I joined the civil service. And that was me for the next 26 years.
So, Ian, how did Border Journeys come out of this?
Borders Journeys had always been something burning at the back of my head. I knew I didn't want to finish my career at 60 as a civil servant. I wanted more from life than 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, sitting in an office with 6 weeks annual leave a year, and that was my holiday time. I wanted a bit more from life, so when the opportunity came to leave the civil service, I grasped it and ran with it. And towards the end of my career, I was in holiday in Madeira. And for me travelling, I was always an independent traveller. I never wanted a package holiday. I never wanted someone else to dictate to me what I was doing on holiday, as some group tours do. So everything for me is independent. I do my own research, I do my own planning, I do my own booking. I get from A to B myself, whether it's local train, local bus, whatever. But in Madeira, when I was there, I wanted to visit the levadas, the tiered agricultural terraces up in the mountains. And I had three options. First option was to hire a moped, and I thought, I've never driven a moped before, so I thought, that's not for me. Second one was hiring a car. And the only issue with that was I was there myself. So if I was driving and watching where I was going, I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see, the terraces. So there were some small tour excursions, and there was one sort of appealed to me because it was a minibus. It had a maximum of 8 people in it, and I thought, well, I can cope with that. So booked onto it, and we were going up the hill, up the mountain, and the tour guide was telling us a wee bit about the history, the heritage, the culture, and pointing out the levadas and telling us all about agriculture and seeing all the banana plantations and everything. And I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to share my passion like this tour guide is sharing their passion of their homeland. So the proverbial was, I went up one side of the mountain as a civil servant and came back down the other side, realizing what I wanted from my life. I wanted my own tour business. And within 3 days of that mini tour, it was a full day tour, I had drawn up a business plan of what I wanted to do. And I always say Borders Journeys was born in Madeira.
I think that is an amazing story. You went on holiday. You had no idea you were going to come back from that trip with a plan for the rest of your life, creating a business, combining your passions of Scotland, tourism, history, and you created a business from that one excursion.
Yeah, it was almost like it was a life changer.
Imagine if you had taken the moped or hired a car. We wouldn't be having this conversation, and you probably wouldn't have the business.
No, I'd probably still be a civil servant.
I'm a great believer in the stars aligning, and I probably say this in every podcast. I certainly believe when the time is right, opportunities present themselves. You have to be open to a certain respect, as in open to see and maybe look at these opportunities. You grasped it, did your business plan within 3 days, and as they say, the rest is history. What a story! What a story!
Absolutely, yeah. And I've never looked back. And as you in the introduction says, I'm living my dream just now.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. So you offer guided tours around Scotland, but a big part of that is doing the research on ancestry for people, because ancestry, I think most people are aware of it. It's a website and you can do your own research. However, I think you have to be very patient. You have to be very careful of some of the leads, that you're not going down the wrong path. But you are concentrating on a particular area of Scottish history, and you have the ability to go to the archives, to various people, and do it all for yourself rather than just everything online.
Yeah, that's correct. It's very much, it's a building of your own knowledge base to know where to search and what to search for.
Because I think a lot of people would like to do their family trees. And I did have a guest, Gina, on here, and she had researched her family trees. And one of the things she said is patience, number one, time, number two, and be careful for all those sort of false leads. Don't get too excited when something crops up, because that could lead you down the garden path. But you are physically going to archive offices. I mean, on your video, which I encourage everyone to have a look at your video, you've done a fantastic section there about going to Scotland's People's Centre and going to the actual archives with your white gloves, looking at these documents yourself and spending time doing this research.
I'm passionate about family history. I always have been. And when a client contacts me, I want the best for my client. I want them to be as excited as I am when I make a breakthrough. So when they may come to me and say, I do know my family migrated from Scotland, or they may still be in Scotland, we don't know. When they come to me and say the family migrated from Scotland in the 19th century, they're keen to link back to their ancestors in Scotland. So we talk through it, exchange emails, we may do a Zoom, we may do a Skype, just for me to tease out more information from them to get them back to a point of when their ancestors arrived, for example, North America, Australia, New Zealand. And from that point, I can pick up the story, the trail in Scotland, using archives, using Scotland's People's Centre, using online repositories. So there's a myriad of different ways I can go about doing the research for the client. The strongest piece of advice I can give someone is ancestry.com is a fantastic research tool. It's fantastic for the documents that Ancestry has procured and made available online. However, there's research by users that they upload on to Ancestry. Never, ever copy someone else's research, because you don't know 100% whether their research is correct. So you can look at it, you can get ideas from it, but never ever copy it as law. Because there's an example from my own family. From time to time, I'll look on Ancestry to see if anybody's researching any of my ancestors. I found one, 3 times great-grandfather, John Weir. Now, he was born in Carmichael Parish in Lanarkshire. He married in Carmichael Parish. All his children were born in Carmichael Parish. He's on every census during his life in Carmichael Parish, and he died in the parish, and he's buried in the parish churchyard. I doubt he ever left the parish in his entire life. However, I'm saying a researcher, someone in Canada has taken him. He's immigrated to Canada. They've married him to a different lady. He's lived in Canada and died in Canada. And they've got the wrong John Weir. So you've got to be very careful. I've written to the person, but they insist that they have the right John Weir. There's nothing I can do about it. They've done their research. They feel it's correct. I've got all the certificates, all the backup here to say that he is my 3 times great-grandfather. Unless, of course, he led a double life. But I imagine my 3 times great-grandmother would sort of quiz the fact that where was he going for months, possibly years on end? And also, some of the children born in Canada were born at the same time as the children in Scotland. So there's a lot of pitfalls through there, and it's working through these pitfalls.
I think that's the thing, because you are a professional at doing it. You know what you're doing. You know where to go, what to look for, what to look for so that you don't go down the wrong avenue, so to speak. Whereas I think a lot of people, when Ancestry first came out, oh yeah, I'm researching my family tree, and you get caught up in the enthusiasm of it. You know, as you say, it's applying for the documentation, looking at all these leads and sort of seeing which are the truths and which is false out of all these things. So, Ian, can we talk about some of the tours you're doing with people? Where do you get your clients from?
A majority of my clients come from North America. So they're predominantly from the US and Canada. However, I do get clients from Australia, New Zealand, and also South Africa. It's predominantly the main migrant countries for English speakers in the 18th and 19th century. So North America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. And majority of them find me either through my website, via social media, or word of mouth. That's where my customer base comes from.
I mean, word of mouth is the best form of promotion.
Absolutely.
Ever, no matter what you're doing. So what's the first step then? Somebody gets in contact with you. Ian, my name is XYZ. I believe I've got family in Scotland. How can we get together and research the family history? How does it start?
It all starts from the first thing I advise clients to do is talk to any relatives. Find out from relatives, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, what do they know about the family? And sort of start fitting together the jigsaw. Find out what you can yourself in your home nation. How long have you been there? When did your ancestors arrive? Once we've got that link, we can then come forward to Scotland. And from Scotland, that's where I pick up the trail and look the records, find out parish records. These were the pre-1855 records, because civil registration didn't begin in Scotland until 1855. So you get the births, deaths and marriages registered from 1855. Prior to that, it was the responsibility of the church. Now these are a bit sporadic on whether, one, the records were well kept in the parish, and two, whether they survived, because they may have been destroyed by fire, they may have been destroyed in disturbances throughout the period of history, or they just have simply got lost, misplaced through time.
So people get in touch with you with the view to come into Scotland to see maybe where their family lived or where a relative was born. Before that actually happens, you are working on finding out the family history, piecing it all together, and at some point you say, okay, this is what I found out, and they make the decision then to travel from Canada or wherever over to Scotland, and then you start planning where you're going to take them, what they can see, and obviously reviewing the documents. Is that how it works?
That's how it works, yes. We work together on this. So there's a lot of back and forward. And once I have completed the research, we get extensive research report with all the information in it. We then start to discuss the tour, where we'll go, what we'll see during the tour. And often as not, yes, it's an ancestral tour, so predominantly it's towards the client's ancestral heritage. But also, as well as ancestral heritage, the clients like to understand how their ancestors would fit into Scottish history. So we visit visitor attractions, we visit castles, we visit battle sites, and it just gives them a feel of, at a period of time when their ancestors were in Scotland, potentially they could have witnessed this event. They were around at the time of this event. So it's how would that event have affected them on a daily basis? They may have been 100 miles away, but there may have been a ripple effect on how that has overwhelmed a community or on a personal level. So it's not just about the actual family heritage, it's just understanding how that their heritage, how their ancestry fits in to the history, the heritage and the culture of Scotland today.
So we've talked quite a lot here about people using you to research their family history and then combining that with a tour of Scotland. Could people also say, okay, I want to come to Scotland and I'm really interested in sort of food. Would you be able to tailor a tour for that client, particularly about Scottish food and the drink, and take them to a restaurant, maybe take them to a typical tea shop?
Absolutely. because one of my passions is food. And one of the fortunate things about being a tour guide throughout Scotland is you begin to learn where the good places are to eat and also to stay. So, best guest houses. So, I'm a bit of a connoisseur when it comes to cake. I think you know that, Sheila. So, if you join Borders Journeys on a tour, we always have, in the afternoon, we always have cake o'clock. There's always time to stop for a cake, and it's always around afternoon tea time, 3 o'clock, and we just happen to be in that village, and I know where that particular tea shop is. As well as that, yes, I know the good restaurants. The one thing visitors to Scotland want are traditional fish and chips. Know where the best fish and chip restaurants are, but also one of the fabulous natural dishes we have in Scotland is fresh fish. So I know where all the fabulous fish restaurants right around the coastline are in Scotland. So on a Borders Journeys tour, you're never ever going to hunger.
Well, that's interesting. You talking about fish and chips, because that wouldn't be the first thing I would expect in Scotland.
Fish and chips, it was a tradition that was introduced by a lot of the Italian community in the early 20th century. And we have a large Italian community in Scotland who arrived in Scotland late 19th, early 20th century. So a lot of the fish and chip shops are still in a lot of Italian families or descendants of Italian families. But again, a lot of Scots have fish and chip shops. But yeah, fish and chips is something that I think is just known as a UK dish.
Yes, exactly.
Dish. And it's just something that a lot of folks from North America, Australia, New Zealand have heard about. And they just want to have that experience of fish and chips, because in particularly a lot of states in United States, I've been told they never have fresh fish. It's always frozen fish, because if they're mid states, there's maybe lakes, but it's not enough fish to provide for the whole state. So a lot of the fish is brought in frozen, whereas they want to experience fresh fish, almost like it's almost still got a heartbeat. It's so fresh.
This is so interesting, because I would associate fish and chips with England, not Scotland. If I was thinking about the food of Scotland, I would be thinking of haggis, neeps, and particularly cake. I mean, I don't know why, but fruit cake, I mean, I guess the Dundee cake, the fruit cake, that type of thing, that's what I would associate with a wee dram and a slice of cake and a hot cup of tea. That to me just sounds the perfect cake time, cake o'clock.
Haggis. A lot of visitors to Scotland have heard of haggis. They've read potentially what's in haggis, and when you mention haggis to them, it's like, I'll never ever put haggis to my mouth. And what I tend to do at a meal, we'll order our meal, but what I'll do is I'll order up a taster of haggis, neeps and tatties, and just let people have a taste of it, because very difficult screwing your nose up and saying, that's horrible, when you've never actually tasted it to see how nice it is. And actually some people, they do go, actually that tastes lovely. But haggis is not high up there in the tasting. Fish and chips, yes. Often lamb, because people have read about Scottish lamb, is often requested. But fresh fish, and particularly when you go up the west coast of Scotland, you get some fabulous, absolutely amazing fish restaurants.
Just going back to the lamb, I would associate lamb with Wales,
Oh
not
no,
Scotland.
no.
I would associate salmon and kippers with Scotland,
Mhm.
but certainly not fish and chips and lamb. So this is fascinating.
Well, in Scotland, a population of there and thereabouts of 5.4 million people. There's around 10 million sheep in Scotland. So you're looking at 1.8 sheep to every human being. So there's more sheep in Scotland than there are human beings.
Where are all these sheep, Ian? What part of Scotland?
They're all over, particularly in the lowlands and the highlands. Wherever you go in Scotland, you will see sheep.
There are that many sheep. I
There
cannot
are
believe
that
it.
many sheep. And there'll be more just now because we've just gone through the lambing season.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody's coming to Scotland, I mean, this has just blown my mind. I thought I would be eating haggis, neats and tatties and Dundee cake and copious amounts of tea. No, Sheila, you're going to be having fish and chips and roast lamb. That's not what I expected at all.
A lot of people have misconceptions about the Scottish food being rather heavy and stodgy. We have got some of the best chefs in the world. Michelin star restaurants, we are up there for cuisine. And again, a lot of clients, they comment on the fresh quality of our food, the freshness, how well tasty it is, because it's not industrial farming, as you may find in some parts of the world. The fish has come from the sea, it's come from sea lochs. There is industrial fish farming in Scotland, but it's all within a sea loch or a freshwater loch. And there's so much good farming husbandry out there that you do get incredibly fresh quality meat. But again, one of the comments particularly from North America, is they're astounded diet restrictions that we cater for here. Whether you're gluten-free, whether you're vegetarian, whether you're vegan, we do cater for all that exceptionally well in Scotland on a tour. But again, just going back to earlier what you mentioned about drink. Yeah, we can go to whisky distilleries. We can go to breweries. And again, in Scotland, one of the drinks that's almost exceeding whisky is gin. There's micro gin distilleries popping up everywhere. So a lot of small villages and towns, they're now distilling their own unique gin. A gastronomy and drink tour. You could have a gastronomy tour or just simply a whiskey, gin and beer tour if that's what you wanted.
I mean, I would never have thought for one moment that gin is becoming popular in Scotland. I thought you would have, stuck to your guns. No, we're producing the best whiskies, and Scottish whisky is renowned all over the world. You can doubt that. But now you've got a big sort of business going with gin.
Well, the last I read last year, and again, what's happening in the world today with COVID, some information is not readily available just now because I haven't been travelling, etc. But the last I read was if the consumption of gin increased at the level that it was increasing, that domestically gin would outsell whisky by 2021, 2022 in Scotland. Because although the idea is that all Scots drink whisky, that's a misconception. In my family and friendship group, my brother-in-law is the only one that drinks whisky. The rest will drink wine, beer, or gin. Gin is incredibly popular because you can buy gin to just about every taste and flavour available. One of my favourites is rhubarb and ginger gin. You drink it with either Prosecco or ginger ale, and it's absolutely delicious.
I imagine, though, if we look at whiskey is either drunk neat or with a little water.
Yes.
You don't start mixing whiskey with anything else. Whereas gin, years ago, you just had gin and tonic. Now, as you say, we've got all these flavoured gins and the way it's served, that's really moved on. But I think the whiskey, I mean, I'm not a whiskey drinker at all, but it's sort of a perfect product. Do not mess about with it. You either have it neat or a little bit of water and that's it. We do not need bells and whistles with a good whiskey. However, gin, you can go in lots of different directions with your gin and it's changing all the time. I mean, here in Spain, we went through a phase of putting blue coloured tonic in your gin. So you had like a blue drink. I'm not sure whether that's still a thing now because we've got all the flavoured gins here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't know about the fish and chips, didn't know about the lamb, didn't know about the gin at all. I mean, what an education.
Every day's a learning day, isn't it?
It is a learning day. So, Ian, let's talk about Edinburgh now. So if people are coming to Edinburgh, where are their sort of top places that they want to go? What's on their bucket list for Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, you can't come to Edinburgh and not go to the castle. Dominates Edinburgh. It's built on a dormant volcano and it sits very rarely do you go into a city, a modern city, and there right in the centre of town you've got a castle, and Edinburgh Castle dominates. Wherever you are in the city you can virtually see Edinburgh Castle. You've got the historic Royal Mile or the High Street. It's the High Street, it's several streets that link together that create what's known as the Royal Mile, which links the castle, Edinburgh Castle, with the Palace of Holyrood House. Palace of Holyrood House, that's Her Majesty the Queen's official residence when she's in Edinburgh. Or it's the official residence of any members of the royal family who are in Edinburgh or Scotland on official business. This week we've got the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge in residence because they're on an official visit to Scotland. So they're based in Edinburgh. So the palace closes when a member of the royal family is in residence. Other than that, it's open to the public and it's also used by the Scottish Government for official government receptions. So you've got the castle, the palace, but also you've got the history of Edinburgh on that street, on that mile. So you've got that aspect. You've also got the Royal Yacht Britannia, which was the Queen's yacht, which is now moored at Ocean Terminal down in Leith, down in the docks. But also you've just got so much architecture because in Edinburgh we talk about the Old Town, which is the medieval town, which is based around the castle, the Royal Mile and the palace. But then cross Princess Street Gardens, you've got the new town, which dates from 1760, and it is the Georgian. So you've got the beautiful Georgian architecture, you've got the squares, you've got the crescents. And Edinburgh's a UNESCO city, World Heritage City. And there's just so much to see and do and experience in Edinburgh.
As you say, with the Royal Mile, you've got the palace and the castle within a mile of each other. I mean, that is phenomenal for any country. Normally you spend an awful lot of time going from A to B, but you've got probably the two biggest attractions. Now, can people go around the castle? They can.
Yes, absolutely.
Castle.
Yeah.
What about Holyrood? Can they go round there?
Yes, absolutely. There's the castle it's still a working military base. So you will see the military moving around within it. It's subtle. There's military museums, there's the Scottish Crown Jewels, the Honours of Scotland there. So a majority of the castle you can still go around and visit. And it's one of the most popular visitor attractions in Scotland, attracting over 1 million people a year.
That's an incredible number.
Yeah. The palace is open to the public, and you can tour through the palace also. So both are open. For me to give advice, I would say it's best to do the palace and the castle on 2 separate days. It's a bit much to do the castle, the Royal Mile, and the palace. Better 2 days to really take in the whole experience and to take in the atmosphere, because on the Royal Mile you've got a lot of visitor shops. You've got tartan, knitwear, and traditional Scottish gifts. You've got some fabulous bars, you've got tea rooms, you've got restaurants, you've got everything you can imagine in a capital city you've got on the Royal Mile. But not just the castle and the palace, you've also got St Giles Cathedral, which is the High Kirk of Edinburgh. And it's there every 2 years. The Queen has the Order of Thistle service, and the Order of Thistle is the highest level of chivalry in Scotland. So it's Scotland's equivalent to the Order of the Garter. And that's every 2 years that service is held in St Giles Cathedral.
So I'm just thinking here, if I'm coming to Edinburgh, I've got a whole day at the castle, another day at the palace, but also during the year you have the Edinburgh Tattoo.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is for people that maybe don't know?
So it began as a military performance, music, etc. And now there's performers from all over the world come to the Edinburgh Military Tattoo, and it's over 4 weeks in August. And at each performance, there's 8,800 can attend each performance. So you can imagine calculating that up over 4 weeks, how many people actually attend the military tattoo. And at the end of every performance in the evening, there's a firework show also. So it's the most amazing experience to go. I've been to many military tattoos, both on a personal level, but also with clients, and they are completely blown away with it. And that is a reason that a lot of visitors come to Edinburgh during August. One, to experience the International Festival, the Fringe Festival, and the Book Festival, and every other festival in between. And the main reason they come is the military tattoo, because people have grown up watching the military tattoo on TV, but they just want to be there to experience it. And there's no better feeling and to make your entire body tingle as when the mass pipes come out of a floodlit castle onto the esplanade and play. You can feel the hairs in the back of your hands standing, and it just, for those who come to visit, they absolutely love it. But for Scots going, it's a huge national pride. Just,
sure.
This is us. This is us, the mass pipe bands, the tartan, the bagpipes. It just showcases Scotland so beautifully.
So basically you know in Edinburgh how to put on a show.
Oh, we definitely know how to put on a show.
Now, another thing I wanted just to touch with you briefly, you mentioned the Edinburgh Arts Festival.
Yes.
Now, that's an annual event, is it?
That's an annual event, and it is at the same time as the tattoo. So you've got performers again from all over the world, and it's music, dance, it's performances. So you've got the Edinburgh International Festival, you've got the tattoo, the Edinburgh International Festival, you've got the Book Festival, but you've also got the Fringe Festival. So the Fringe Festival tends to be amateurs, so they're street artists, they take over small halls, venues all over the city, and there's thousands upon thousands of performers. And the high street in Edinburgh almost becomes an open-air theatre. Street acts happening every corner.
Yeah, I mean, when you listen to interviews with famous people, whether they're writers, whether they're actors or performers, so many of them say one of the things they wanted to do was to take part in the Edinburgh Festival. And this seems to be one of the things that is one of their particular goals, and also can be a kickstart to their career as well. I mean, it's one of those things they all want to do.
Many famous actors, musicians, they've cut their teeth at the Edinburgh Festival. And again, there's so many talent scouts out there during festival.
One thing just before we finish, Ian, Scottish tartan.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is your family name, let's talk about Scottish people in general, your family name will generally have a tartan associated?
No, yes, historically not always.
Okay, so explain to me about the tartan.
The tartan, a lot of clans did have their traditional tartans for them. But again, with modern tourism, a lot of families have become clans, have had tartans created for them. Walter Scott, back in the early 19th century, he recorded a lot of Scottish history. He romanticised Scottish history. Queen Victoria loved Scotland. She loved Scottish history. And there was that romanticism of the clan system, the tartans attached to every clan. It wasn't always, because the Lowlands didn't have clans, they had families. Not everybody was the member of a clan. It tended to be a Highland thing, because now certain clan families have got the traditional tartan, they've got the hunting tartan, and they've got the dress tartan, and they've got the modern tartan. One of the misconceptions is that you can only wear the tartan of your family. Now, I don't wear my family tartan. I don't wear a Walker tartan. When back in 1993, when my last grandparent died, my maternal grandfather, he left us grandchildren a legacy. And I decided I was going to put my legacy towards buying my own kilt and regalia. Up until that point, if I'd been going to a reception, a wedding, or a formal event, I just hired for the evening. But I really wanted my own kilt and regalia. So I went to the kilt maker, and when you go there and say what your name is, it's almost like, remember back in the day when you went to select wallpaper, you had the big wallpaper books. Well, they had the big books, the big volumes of tartan. So he went and he got me the Walker one, and I looked at it and went, no way am I wearing that colour. It was red. No way am I wearing that. So then puts it away, and my mum's maiden name is Wach. Very difficult one for people south of the border to say Wach. You pronounce it as Waugh, W-A-U-G-H. We pronounce it, the G-H is a ch. So it brings that out and flicks through, gets Wach. It was brown and yellow. And I thought, no, not wearing brown and yellow. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to go with my grandmother's. So he brings out the Cunningham, which is my maternal grandmother, and I looked at it. No way! It was crimson red and yellow. And I thought, no way am I wearing that. And you could see by now he's thinking, is he going to go through his entire ancestry, this guy? So eventually I says, right, I want to see the Shaw tartan, and that was my paternal grandmother. So he brings it out, and I saw it, and I thought, that is the tartan for me. And it's a muted green, it's a muted blue, and it just has a really nice, fresh look to it. And it's one that I feel comfortable wearing. And one of the lovely things about wearing that tartan is, out of my four grandparents, it was my paternal grandmother was the only one that I never met because she died when she was young. So it's that connection with the grandparent that I never met. So there's a couple of reasons I really like that tartan. So it just shows that, yes, I'm a walker. There is a walker tartan, but I chose not to wear walker. I chose to wear another family name, my paternal grandmother. And again, it's potentially, in the past, it was more formal. You wore your clan tartan. It's a lot less formal that you can pick and choose. And let's face it, Scotland has a tartan. The football teams have tartans. Hello Kitty has a tartan. Coca-Cola has a tartan. So if you've got the money, you can have your own tartan designed for you. Tartan is very much part of Scottish culture, but it's not everything about Scotland. It defines us absolutely definitely, because whenever anybody mentions Scotland, they mention tartan, haggis, whiskey and shortbread. And more importantly, the Loch Ness Monster.
It's very interesting. You've hit it on the head. When you were talking about your family tartan, as in Walker, I thought I forgot to mention the shortbread when we were talking about the food of Scotland. Absolutely.
You can buy fabulous shortbread in Scotland, but the best shortbread you'll get anywhere in Scotland is from my mother's kitchen.
One thing that is very strange here, living in Valencia, a majority of the schools in Valencia, the school uniform for girls is a tartan kilt.
Yeah.
Now, in this country, when they're still at school and they're in school till the end of June, we are normally well into the mid-30s. Wearing a tartan kilt as your school uniform, and they wear that with a little polo top, and in the winter they just put a sweater over the top. I have no idea why international and Spanish schools choose a kilt, which is a thick material in a plethora of different colours depending on your school, as their school uniform. I have no idea.
Scottish influence is everywhere in the world.
Obviously. So, Ian, just before we go, we've talked about borders journeys. We've talked about you can visit a place, you can combine that with researching the family history. We've talked about the food. We've talked about Edinburgh, and we've talked about the mile in Edinburgh, where you've got the palace, you've got the castle, the book fair, the tattoo, the arts festival. How can people get in touch with you? Because I want to travel, and all through this pandemic, one of the places we've been watching on the TV is Scotland, because we've had an awful lot of coverage on the news about Nicola Sturgeon and about the elections, etc. So we've had a bit of a guided tour of Scotland just generally through the news. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Best way is contact me via my website, bordersjourneys, via social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, again, all Borders Journeys.
Okay, well, I will make sure that all those details go on the Facebook page, Instagram, and everywhere else. Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure. I keep thinking about the cake and the tea.
It's a reason to come to Scotland.
Absolutely. And now you're talking about the best shortbread is to be had in your mother's kitchen. I think I need to make friends with your mum.
Exactly. And just as a wee side on the cake o'clock, it was a family that I've hosted now 3 times coming across here, and I introduced them to sticky toffee pudding. And on the first evening, they were going through the menu. What's the sticky toffee pudding? So I described sticky toffee pudding to them. Oh, we'll have that. So for every night for the rest of the tour, they had sticky toffee pudding in every different restaurant we went to. And at the end, they awarded the sticky toffee pudding prize.
That sounds a perfect plan. Every evening, try a different place for sticky toffee pudding.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant. Ian, it's been an education. It's been a pleasure and so fascinating. So thank you so much for your time, Ian, and good luck with Borders Journeys.
Thank you very much, Sheila. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget, if you have a story you would like to tell, please get in touch. My email address is allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and thank you for listening.